Welcome into a very special edition of 11 Personnel presented by Monticello Bank. You know them because they got 21 branches in 14 different counties. They're putting the numbers on your side because at Monticello Bank, they believe that's where people matter. They're going to put you first. They're going to take good care of you at Monticello Bank. Visit them online at nbcbank.com. They've been in business for 128 years for a reason. So go check them out today. MonticelloBank.com. NBCBank.com, Monticello Bank. Shout out Monticello Bank. Shout out sponsorships. We love you. We're happy you're here. And we're happy to be here for a rapid reaction edition of 11 Personnel because as we were getting ready to go on the show, within the 5 minutes, I posted the YouTube link to the website and the actual start of the show. Cedric Works announced he has committed to Kentucky. He becomes the highest ranked commitment in Kentucky's 2025 recruiting class, a 4-star edge talent, ranked as the number 143 player overall, according to the On3 industry ranking. Look, I'm proud of you because you got the RPM pick with about 45 minutes to spare. So, as real pros pro move right there. Well done, sir. I appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate the kind words. Uh, yeah, I think this is a big one, Nick. Premium position, top 150 player. Guy, one of your top targets at edge. This guy you beat out Florida, Penn State for. Like this is a big. Cedric Works is a big deal. I think it's a big get. We talk about edge recruiting and how you kind of got to get the high rated guys. Like if you want to be successful there, you got to get the high rated guys and Kentucky style of defense, you got to have guys out there that can play. And there's a lot to be excited. I mean, twitched up, kind of skinny, but has the potential to be kind of your bendy edge rusher, guy that can turn the corner as a pass rusher. And so a lot to be excited about with him here. And it continues what, for Kentucky, continues to build up steam. Like they're putting together a good class here, and they've got some momentum right now.
It's one of those two where I mean, this is the gosh, man, I'm just fired up, dude, because this guy's a dude. You throw on his tape bucket, and he's so much fun because you watch any of these guys who get recruited at a high level to be an edge rusher. They all got a good amount of juice. You see the quarterback sacks. What's crazy about this guy? So he's listed at 6'5", 230 out of Dayton, Ohio, plays for Northmont. It's not just the pass rushing. Guys dropping back into coverage. He's jumping routes. He's picking off passes at the line of scrimmage. And I know you have to make a comparison to another Kentucky player because that's just easy. It's very palatable. But Jordan Wright didn't do this in high school. Jordan Wright did this in college where he just had a nose for the football. Cedric Works has a nose for the football, and he's got the athleticism to do so many things on the field. He is such a fun prospect. This is a significant recruiting win for Kentucky landing CJ Works today.
Yeah, and I think it's more evidence that this is a nice Ohio class. It gets pretty deep. Ohio State can't grab every player as much as they try. And so there's going to be a lot of good players here, and I think Kentucky's taking advantage. Like you go into Cleveland, you get a Marquise Davis. Now you go into Dayton, and you get a Cedric Works. These are two top 200 players, high-level players. A lot of times it's hard to get top 200 type players out of Ohio because there's maybe not a lot of them. There's only a couple, 3, 4, 5 maybe. And Ohio State usually gets those. And on this end, in this year, there's just so much talent in that class. And now I think Kentucky and Merrill Vince Merrill has them in position to take advantage. Again, like as you see on the tape there, if for those watching on YouTube, he can bend the edge, turn the corner, can go get the quarterback. And that's something really Kentucky, we're going to talk about it over the next month or so. Like to me, one of the most important players on the roster this season is Tyrese Fearbry because he can get off, he can bend the shoulder, dip the shoulder, and he can get around the edge and he can brush the passer. He could be a game changer for Kentucky's defense this season. Cedric Works, to me, has a similar skill set and a similar profile of player. And that's something Kentucky really hasn't had over the last couple of years. And now they They get that here in this class with Works. There's just a lot to be excited about. And not just him overall. I just think the recruiting class, again, it probably started a little slow, but they've got some big boy prospects now in this class with Works, with Martellus Carter, with Marquise Davis, and then you can even throw, I think, Darren Stray and Andrew Purcell in there. These are guys that had legitimate top level options, and Kentucky won out in some heated recruiting battles for them. So there's a lot to like here.
There really is a lot to like. I mean, we've reached a point where it's like, yeah, I remember this play on the highlight reel because I've been watching it so much. It's so delightful. He's got that reach that can sort of act like Spider-Man, where even if he doesn't get to the quarterback, he can make a play. I mean, you don't have to sack him. You can still get there and create some havoc. And the point you make is well taken about the state of recruiting in the state of Ohio in this class, where Vince Marrow's always been really good at what he does. He's just got a ton of options in this class. And these are guys, too, that, Ohio State's recruiting a lot of them, right? It's not just, Ohio State's getting some guys, and then Kentucky's getting a lot of the rest. Jim Harbaugh, he doesn't have Clink recruiting in Ohio for him. Vince is going in there, and he's raising all sorts of hell between Marquise Davis, who you already mentioned, Brennan Ward, the quarterback. And they got another guy that they've got their sights set on too, in Dwayne Galloway. And they feel good about where they stand with him. He's a top 150 cornerback. So I'm it's one of those things like it where you're going to get criticism plenty of times from the coaching staff from a variety of angles when they're not firing on all cylinders. We've had some of that on the recruiting front this year. You can't have that right now because they got some bona fide dudes, some legitimate studs, and you got to give a lot of credit to Vince Marrow. He's $1 million man. He's getting paid to recruit like a badass, and right now he's recruiting like a badass.
The Ohio recruiting, like they're kind of loading up in Ohio, Nick. They've hit double-digit commits twice in the Mark Stoops era in Ohio. I don't know if they're going to get double digits now, but they're going to have 8 or 9 guys. And then they've got to, if they get Dwayne Galloway, they can have 3 top 200 players. They only had a couple classes, 2 classes overall with more than 2 top 200 players. 2014 and 2022. They could do that just in Ohio in this class.
And it goes back to the point too we made about recruiting top 10 guys from the state of Ohio. Mm-hmm. It's a very short list of Lynn Bowden, Darian Kennard, Chris Oates. Some are escaping me. Jatan McClain was one. Brian Robinson and Teron Nichols were in the recent class, and now they got 3. Could have 3 or 4 more. So it's my head's kind of spinning. Luckett.
Yeah, when you pull up the just Ohio State or the rankings on On3, like the top 10 players, it could be 2 to 3 Kentucky guys, and the rest could be Ohio State. So in this class, Kentucky is so far knocking it out of the park in that I would say that Ohio State's tier A, and then there's that tier B. And typically in that tier B, Nick, you see Michigan, you see Notre Dame, you see Penn State sometimes, and you see some other teams sneak in there. We saw Cincinnati with Luke Fickell be pain in the rear. Michigan State in their past with Mark D'Antonio, when they had it rolling, they were getting some of those guys. And you see Kentucky in there. But now Kentucky is kind of in that class all by themselves in this cycle. And that is very good to see. And again, as Pete goes through the rankings, Kentucky's team page right here, all these guys, Ohio, Kentucky, Ohio, and then you got Darren Stray in Michigan. And so that's where Kentucky is making its mark in this class. And again, you want to have the star power in any class, specifically Kentucky. You got to get a couple of these guys, a couple of these top 200, a couple of these top 250 guys, and you need to hit on them. Works is a big one. And not only is a big one, again, he's at a premium position. Like, good edge rushers are hard to find. And he's got a skill set that is very, very intriguing, and one that should travel to the next level. And so I would be very excited about this get. And again, like you mentioned, Nick, Vince Marrow, given the big dog nickname for a reason. He's earning that paycheck, and he's going to different parts of Ohio and getting wins, like Cleveland, Dayton. You got Tucker Caddis out of Cincinnati St. X. Got
Brennan Ward from Columbus.
Brennan Ward from Columbus, the receiver. Quentin Simmons out of Cincinnati Withrow. And you also got Dwayne Galloway, who's in Columbus as well. So you're hitting the big 3 metro areas in this class, and that Cleveland area has been one that they've not necessarily had as much success in. They've had more of their Columbus and Cincinnati they've been able to make some hay in, but doing it all around the state now and just having a really, really big class and giving Kentucky the inside track right now to have a top 25 class. And they've hit on a lot of OV guys. They've gotten a lot of those OV guys in June committed already, and that's a very good sign.
Works told Hayes Fawcett, I heard the best in Ohio go to Kentucky. And Hayes brought his A game from this graphic, too. He stepped it up. So CJ Works, he's a bona fide, huge recruiting win for Kentucky. He officially visited Florida a few weeks back. Penn State was also in the mix. You rarely get the Ohio recruiting battle with Florida, but it's always great to win one over an SEC opponent, over James Franklin. A significant recruiting win for Vince Marrow. Some rather shocking news. You placed an RPM pick, like I said, right before it. I think I put one in on Sunday. So we had a feeling this news was coming. We just didn't. It was still shocking to hear it as that we're getting ready to fire up the podcasting machine. Still not the most shocking thing that happened today, though, Luckett.
No, can't say it was.
We had Rick Pitino on KSR telling the Big Blue Nation that he's cutting checks to the Kentucky football program.
Yeah, I don't know if, Tino has told a fib or two in his day. I don't know how much to believe all that, but definitely like Eddie Grain getting a mention from Rick Pitino was not on my KSR summer bingo card.
I mean, they're horse buddies. They both own horses. They're probably tearing it up at Keeneland.
That makes sense. That would be the connection, I suppose.
And here's the thing, too, Luckett. I pondered the thought. I don't know about you, but when I'm with my friends and we're just sitting around shooting the you-know-what after a couple cocktails, we start to bet on things. You think they ever get in their own friendly wagers like, hey, if my horse wins, I'll write a check to your program. If your horse wins, I'll write a check to yours. So I could see Pitino losing a bet to Stoops and having to write $1,000 to the 15 club, right? Like I wouldn't put it past me.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. I immediately went back to that random tweet from last year. Was it last summer or last year?
It was in October during the Keeneland meet. Stoops and Pitino were hanging out at Jeff Ruby's, I'm guessing.
That was like, whoa, that's a surprise. And I did not expect to hear that. Rick is definitely he's taking advantage of this post-Cal era, and he's definitely taking advantage of a guy that used to play for him, being in the post here at Kentucky, and so he's doing the Pitino thing. It's a little self-serving, but it's definitely weird, and he's definitely trying to. To me, Nick, he's almost trying to get he's doing what he can to get the Joe B seats, right? Like he's going to coach for St. John's a couple more years, and if Mark Pope is good at Kentucky, he wants to be in the Joe B seats. And when Kentucky wins the title, he wants to be like the second or third person they show. They show Pope, they show the players, and they show Pitino on the sidelines. That's where he wants to be again. And he's on the way. He's throwing any jabs he can at Louisville.
And at Cal, too. When was he said, this is Pope's program. It's time to move on. Which it's so hard for me to fathom and you weren't around these parts when Pitino's regime ended, and it ended in flames at U of L. I mean, we had a Christmas dinner party at Jeff Ruby's where Pitino was sitting along the way, and there was a confrontation between us. And now he's coming on to KSR. I just can't. What's up is down, right is left. while on one hand, I'm not surprised that Pitino's going for this redemption story arc. It's still just baffling to me. No, I love it. Don't get me wrong. I do love it because I was always one of those where I really did love to hate Pitino, where some people would just scoff at it. Like I loved having him around, having him stomping with his designer shoes on the sidelines and wearing the fancy suits and mother effing people in the crowds. Like I loved having Pitino around, even when he was at Louisville. And to have him gone for a while and then come back and then just saying ridiculous stuff all the time. I mean, it's kind of like whenever the Nebraska site will interview Tom Osborne every once in a while for stories. We need the summer Pitino circuit because in reality, he's kind of like our Spurrier in a way, except, in a lot of ways, right? Where he was great for a decade, went to the pros, didn't work out, and goes and plays. It was South Carolina and not necessarily a rival, but another SEC school. So he's kind of like our Spurrier, who's in right now. Spurrier, he's just got an office at the Swamp, and he's just talking smack to whoever he wants. Like, I'm totally cool if Pitino coaches St. John's for 5 years and then ends up just hanging out at Keeneland and then going to Wheeler's Pharmacy and then is firing shots at Louisville left and right. Sign me up for that. Sign me up.
Well, I think that's probably going to happen again, as long as Kentucky it goes well with Pope. Like, all bets are off if things don't go well. But and don't lose to him in Rupp Arena. Not this upcoming season, but the next season. But yeah, he's back. And then the big question is, like, does he go to a game this year? Do we? It's kind of hard because there is overlap with the seasons, right?
Right.
It would have to be an early game. But does he? Does he have a little horse auction he's in town for, and does he swing by Croker Field?
Oh, they'll have him at a practice too, because Pope, he's doing that now where they're showing pictures of all the former guys showing up to practice. So I could certainly see Pitino showing up for that. And I'm glad that this is a valuable lesson to all of the people out there who scoff at horse racing. It brings people together. Even Mark Stoops and Rick Pitino, they're gosh, what a wild. I was as dumbfounded as I was when I was sitting across the table videotaping Katina Powell saying what she said. Like that, it's crazy. I'm having a hard time getting over it, moving on, but that was wild. That was wild.
Nick, but just before we get into our other stuff, these video game rankings,
they're bad.
Specifically defense. It's gross.
I didn't see the defensive ones. Is that EA Sports?
They're up.
Handle?
They're up now. On3 tweeted them out. So just go to On3 page,
okay.
And just tell me what you think about Iowa's ranking.
Wait, they're not. What? Ohio State's number one?
They got a lot of talent this year. So
I know, but what have they done? What have they proven to me?
Okay, look at number 23, Nick.
North Carolina.
North Carolina has not been good on defense since the entire Mac Brown era. And Larry Fedora before that. DC? No, they fired him. Jeff Collins is their defensive coordinator now.
Oh gosh, and woof, these rankings, that's bad. Not having Iowa top 3 is ridiculous. And maybe
Colorado.
Colorado?
Colorado.
I saw that Colorado made it for the offense, even though they were 99th in points per play last year or something like that, or yards per play.
You got to pay the bills, and you got to have I get why you maybe want to sneak Colorado in there. I understand maybe offense because you could talk me into it, like with Shedeur Sanders and some of the receivers they have, and you could talk me into that. But defensively, like, no. Nick, here are North Carolina's SP plus finishes. Over the last, let's just do the last 10 years, okay? Starting in 2014, 108, 51, 41, 58, 95, 44, 53, 101, 105, 78. One top 50 defense in the last decade. And somehow I'm supposed to believe that they're a top 25 defense entering the 2024 season. Make that make sense. Like, I got upset about Florida because Florida hasn't had a top 25 defense since before the pandemic. Like, they've had one of the worst defenses in the SEC over the last 3-4 years. That's a little ridiculous. Louisville, I think the Louisville comparison is like, are they better than Kentucky's defense? But, you can have that argument. But Louisville's got some talent, and they posted numbers last year at least, and they've had, by some metrics, 2 top 25 defenses in a row. So I get all that, but North Carolina here is just absolutely absurd. And then Oklahoma, Nick, number 12. When is the last time Oklahoma had a good defense?
Who's listening? They played any defense. That's how Mike Stoops got fired.
Like, they made big strides last year, and they probably had a top 40 defense under Venables last year.
So here's my question, and because do we think that there was some guy who got together and made these power rankings, or are they trying to rate individual players and then it's just a cumulative of the individual player ratings? Because
now
that would explain it for Iowa, right? I mean, who from Iowa is going to be, 95 overall defensive player, right? Like, so might be a deal where for a lot of defense, the sum is typically greater than its parts, but they're only evaluating it based on the cumulative of the parts.
Right. Like LSU last year was awful on defense, and they are 18 this year.
Just because, and Harold Perkins might be a 95 linebacker or something, And
LSU hasn't had they probably haven't had a 20 or top 15 defense since like 2018 or something along those lines. Like, I wonder if now EA did announce that they were with the help of PFF team or like player ratings, they were kind of making their player rating. So I do wonder if that is how they came up to the overall grade, if they just maybe did that. But even if you did that, I still have a hard time believing that this was the ranking you got.
Well, and one thing I've noticed,
North Carolina, I mean, what pros are on their defense? Like, I would have to see that. That I don't really understand, man. I really, really don't. Oregon at 3 on defense seems rich. Like, that seems like maybe a little bit of a reach. I'd have to dig into Oregon. I'm definitely probably top 10, but 3 seems like a reach.
Here's something I've noticed too, Luckett, when you're scrolling through here. I'm noticing a lot of representation, right? Virginia Tech has a top 25 offense. UCF, Utah has a top 25 offense. When is, I think EA is trying to be very democratic, and they're trying to appease a lot of people. Because if you were doing a real defensive power ratings and you were going off of what ESPN SP Plus uses, 12 or 13 of the top 25 defenses are coming from the SEC. And then 8 or 9 from the Big 10, and then you might get a couple from the Big 12. They're trying to be they want to be inclusive to sell video games. And they want everybody to be a little bit more equal, when the fact of the matter is that's not how the sport works, right? This isn't how the sport works. And frankly, I appreciate that they are contributing to the summer talking season, because this is the deadest time of the year, and it's one of those things where we didn't normally in the years past, you just kind of celebrated the game. Well, in the decade that this game has been gone, we've had the new Madden 99, and you have the Madden Top 100, and that has become like the Madden player ratings are now a summer talking point in the NFL. So EA's like, dude, let's do this for college football too. And it's a genius idea. I love that they're doing it. They just really might stink at it. And you know what? I don't think that's going to completely take away from the game for me, especially if you're playing at home and you can adjust once the season goes on and Deion Walker's just kicking all kinds of ass and nobody can run the football against Kentucky, they all of a sudden got a top 20 defense by October, then I'll be perfectly content, because everybody has some really bad takes during talking season.
Yeah, I think they'll probably get better about how they do all this stuff. Again, I definitely think there's some name brand things going on. There's no really excuse to have Colorado in there other than, you're trying to get you're trying to attract a certain audience to purchase your game.
Yeah. Because I bet Shadur Sanders is not Mike Vick and Madden 04, but I bet he's a lot of fun to play with in this game.
Well, he's going to be probably ridiculous on this game.
Yeah.
He's and I think that was probably for, Colorado's going to be one of the more popular teams people want to play with too, Nick. So maybe it's like, hey, everyone's going to play. We can't have this team just be terrible. Like, people are going to want to play with Colorado, and they're terrible. It's not going to be necessarily good for the game. So let's at least make them fun, which I would have liked. Like, just make them really, really good on offense and bad on defense. And then it's just like, all right, we're getting the shootouts here. But the defense, I just can't get over North Carolina in that top 25 defense. Imagine watching football and knowing nothing about video games, and then you say, hey, they're making this thing where it's going to be kind of like a mock simulation of a season, and North Carolina's top 25 defense. Like, what? In what universe?
Man. Imagine, too, ranking the best stadiums and the best atmospheres for college football and not putting Death Valley Tiger Stadium number 1. Huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a take.
That's somewhat harder. Yeah, I mean, that should have been number 1. That's somewhat harder to do, but having North Carolina in your top 25 defenses is something that should be easily avoidable. Yeah. So they should and the Colorado, I mean, we can defend the Colorado if you want. But other than that, I get it, but like, I just can't get over North Carolina. And then there were some bad offensive ratings too. Like, Tennessee should have been top 25.
Yeah, right. They have to. They're Heupel farts and puts out a top 25 offense.
Nick, I'm willing to bet that Virginia Tech does not have a top 15 defense in college football.
They have a top 15 defense and then top 25 offense. But who believes in Virginia Tech?
There's a lot of Virginia Tech hype, but like, you get into like computer power rankings and they're still like a team in the 40s. But there's some like Louisville vibes with them this year. Like, I don't know how good they'll be, but look at the schedule. They could really do something this year. And so that's kind of where they're at. But yeah, I'm surprised to see them ranked that high. And just Oklahoma number 12 on defense. Like, what?
Yeah. Speaking of doing something, we got something for you
USC
to do.
16 on defense. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing here?
Well, I know what we're doing. We're going to Cruising for a Cause on July 6th at the Valvoline World Headquarters in Lexington, Kentucky. Middle Ground is going to be raising money for Habitat for Humanity with a car show that begins at 11 a.m., wraps up at 3 p.m. There's going to be several awards, multiple categories, and Miss Kentucky's going to be in attendance. So come on out. It's going to be food trucks, vendors, activities for kids. And the first 100 entries to purchase their tickets online will receive a dash plaque celebrating this charity event. That's Cruising for a Cause, July 6th. And that is out at Valvoline headquarters of Valvoline Way in Lexington. $20 to register your car, $10 for general admission. So come join us July 6th to raise money for Habitat for Humanity, Cruising for a Cause. Lucky, you've been to a car show before?
Like, they have the Hot Rod show that I've seen.
I've never been.
I don't know if that counts.
But have you been to it?
Yeah, like when I was little kid.
See, we were never car show people because they always do it at the fairgrounds on the hottest weekend of the year around 1st of August. But I'll go to the car shows where if you show up to Michael Innings the week of National Hot Rods, they bring their hot rods out there. Or sometimes at Iroquois Park, they'll have random car shows. Car shows. You don't have to be a car guy to be like, ooh, that's cool. I'm not a car guy, but I'm a car show guy, which brings me to a point. I need to find a car. So I don't like car shopping. If somebody has a car that's worth selling that I can drive,
get
put
your
a lot of
Tesla.
miles on.
Let's drive to let's make some SEC road trips in Nick Roush's Tesla.
Did you hear what happened to Randall Cobb?
I saw something on the board about him this morning.
They had a fire start at their Tesla charger. It caught fire, spread throughout the house. It doesn't sound like they completely burnt the house down, but his wife said they just grabbed everybody without any shoes, just the clothes on their back. Randall went back in and grabbed the dog, but their Nashville home just set ablaze because the Tesla charger caught on fire. Wild. I
So don't get a Tesla. This is the conclusion we've come to here.
all right, I don't know if it's just me. I thought we quit having house fires in the early 1900s. I just thought those kind of went by the wayside. I don't know.
Down the street from here, about a month and a half, 2 months ago, house caught on fire.
Well, you had your cousin dealt with a house fire.
Yeah.
Like I had a family friend who dealt with one. Ryan Lemond, he had his own house fire. And maybe is it the electrical? Do we need to get our electricians to do some rewiring? I mean, well, what's going on here? House fires, you're not supposed to happen anymore. Go away.
Well, I know. In college, I heard a house is getting on fire because people would come home, do a few drinks, make a frozen pizza.
Forget about it.
Forget about it.
Forget about it.
And so those were a thing back in the day, but I don't know if that's still a thing anymore. But yeah, I think you just got to be careful whether it's you don't, you have a bonfire or you have a fire pit outside your house.
Steve says that shaking my
Don't put it
head,
out.
house fires happen every day. And so I know of quite a few, like I have a lot of firefighter friends, and many of them are stationed in Portland. I understand house fires in Portland. There's vacant houses, squatters, stuff happens in Portland. It's Randall Cobb having a house fire. It's Ryan Lemon having a house fire. That's wild to me. That's shocking. Almost as shocking as some of the commitments we've been happening. And the whole point of this show was to get together to reconvene because our guy Luckett went out of town and Kentucky picked up half a recruiting class.
They did the same thing last year, but I intentionally, not intentionally, but we went a couple weeks earlier on vacation, so I thought, we'll be fine. No, it wasn't fine. So I think they're just waiting for me to leave the state to go on a big recruiting run. It
So
seems
are
like that's
you?
the move.
Do we just need Luckett to take more PTO? Is that like
Yeah.
whenever there's a dry spell for recruiting? All right, Luckett, need to go visit the father-in-law in Jacksonville.
Do y'all want to sell more subs? Let me go on more vacation.
Oh man, which
Do we want
by the
more?
way,
Do we want more advertisement dollars because our hits to the website are up? Let me go ride Velocicoaster again.
which by the way, the business is booming on KS Board. Big Cat, he hopped on the message board. You can hop on too. Promo code UK1 gets you 2 months for only $1. A lot of stuff happening out there. And here's the other part too. Like we always promote KS Board, but KSR Plus, there's been a lot of content on there lately. I think you and Jacob have had maybe 4+ stories a day this week. Jacob had a great story earlier this week too, where I believe it was Braylon Mullins, who's a top 50 basketball recruit, went on a visit. His coach just kind of detailed it, and it was a very cool. We get quotes all the time, like, and you've kind of been there, heard that, but this was a very detailed walk you step by step through how Mark Pope conducts a visit, and it was very eye-opening. So I encourage you all to go read that after you finish watching us gab about recruiting.
Yeah, to me, it's kind of just the message board is the big draw. That's why you should be there. We're sharing intel. We got the community's forming. We're talking Kentucky athletics and all kinds of other stuff every day. Like that goes every day. But on top of that, you get plus articles. So you get a lot of recruiting stuff, whether in-depth recruiting stuff, whether interviews with prospects, basketball and football, portal content, deep dive team content, and right now
Jacob
it's really
was
just
talking
all
to
recruiting.
Bob frickin' Huggins. You ever see that on KSR regular? I don't think so. I'm not going and cold calling Bob Huggins, but we're doing that on KSR Plus. So we appreciate y'all joining us over there. We've got a lot of recruiting chatter to get to. So let's just do chronological order, like it, because I touched on it some with Zach last week, and man, you missed a real poop show. I made the mistake, like it, where I kept the YouTube tab open when I was talking with Pick, our guy JD Piquel, and I was just hearing an echo, and I thought it was technical difficulties. No, you bozo, you didn't exit out the window. Very dumb move on my part. But I talked with Zach about Jacaden Ferguson and Andrew Purcell. I'm really high on both of them, particularly Purcell. What are your thoughts? What jumps off the tape when you're looking at those two guys who committed 2 weeks ago when you first went and hopped on that Velocicoaster?
Yeah, first things with Purcell, um, like the interest was real from a bunch of programs. He blew up kind of this spring and summer. Clemson, Georgia, Miami, Ole Miss, Tennessee were all in pursuit of him. And then you kind of see the ball skills. As a junior, he had 6 interceptions, returned a couple for touchdowns. We don't have any speed testing data on record for him, and he's listed right now at 5'9", 185, so he's a little smaller for what we've seen Kentucky kind of want at corner, which is more kind of like 5'11", 6 foot type guys. But I think on tape you see some translatable traits specifically for Kentucky's scheme. Like he played off coverage there for Enterprise Alabama, showed good eyes, outstanding ball skills. He flips his hips very well in coverage, can change the direction, can run in phase, can trigger down.
Nice acceleration.
Shows willingness as a tackler. Will stick his nose in there, and that's something you always want to see. I think he's a guy that can maybe play some nickel potentially. I think there's some play traits similar to Maxwell Hairston when you just see kind of the eyes and the ball skills when he's playing off coverage. And so I think there's a lot to like about him. Now he's not necessarily, I would say, kind of the traditional kind of cornerback prospect we've seen from Kentucky. So that makes him a little different. So I'll really be interested to see what they think of him and where they would like him to play, because I definitely could see maybe nickel being the proper place for him, because size-wise, he's probably most similar to, I would say, Andrew Phillips of some of the recent cornerbacks that have played here for UK. But definitely a good-looking prospect. He made plays for his high school team, some big plays, and you see here on that pick six, and also played receiver there. So definitely a good get, and you can see the potential and the translatable skill set with him.
Yeah. Well, and I like that you mentioned Phillips just from the look, their build, where he's a long arm but broad-shouldered, physically a pretty impressive, well-built individual. And you're right. I mean, I think a lot of it's going to come down to how he and what his speed numbers and all that sort of stuff is. But winning in the SEC footprint for a guy like that is significant. I am curious because he does have some center fielder-like tendencies. How much could he fit in as a safety? So I was a big fan of the addition of Purcell. I think that's a great get at cornerback for the Cats. With Ferguson, because actually let's wait a second just for Ferguson. Can we talk just cornerbacks for a moment? Because I'm curious your thoughts on DeMarcus Gardner, who Kentucky flipped from UCF. He didn't have a lot of interest outside of that, but he's from Georgia, and I think Kentucky's got a pretty good track record with prospects from the Peach State.
Yeah, he'll be a senior this year at Cedartown High School. Two-way producer, Nick, as a junior. On offense, 33 receptions for 793 yards and 11 touchdowns. And then he's had 8 total interceptions as a sophomore and junior. So that right away you see the ball production, the playmaking skill set. And this guy, Nick, he looks like a Kentucky cornerback on tape. On 3 listing him at 6 foot 165, but you see like really long arms when you turn on the film, long standing reach. So he looks like a big zone corner to me.
Yeah.
I think the play speed, like I would say, Purcell's more like getting going. The first 10, he's faster, but long strider for Gardner. Like he gets rolling once he gets that engine revved up. And again, you see him play off coverage and with eyes on the quarterback. He can cover a lot of ground, and he makes competitive plays at the catch point. I thought Purcell's ball skills were a little better, but you do see some good ball skills with Gardner.
Yeah.
He's a big corner. I would project him, and I think he has the traits to play boundary quarterback. Where we're going to see G.J. Waller, I think, this year in Kentucky's zone-heavy scheme. He's got the length that can clog zone. He plays with, I think, good eye discipline. And when the ball's in the air, he goes and makes plays. And that size, it makes you like the physicality he's going to have, both in press and getting off blocks, and then as a tackler. So there's a lot to like here, I think, with Gardner, and just from like a past kind of the past players we've seen at Kentucky, he kind of fits, I think, the mold a little bit more than Purcell. Not to say he's a better prospect than Purcell. I think you could just see the kind of schematic fit with him.
I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he's also a track and basketball player, and he's a receiver and a return man and a cornerback.
He's got basketball highlights on his Huddle page. Yes.
Yeah. So I like the just. I'm going to be a really good athlete. I'm going to do whatever you tell me, and I'm going to kick ass doing it. I appreciate that in a player from Georgia who, like I said, there's a culture of winning football there. Love getting players from the state of Georgia. So and another thing too, in years past, you've looked around and you've kind of wondered, what are they doing at the cornerback position? To have two guys locked in, and we talked a lot at the top of the show when CJ Works committed about how we're feeling good about Dwayne Galloway. Cornerback might end up being the strength of this class, Luckett, when it's all said and done, if they're able to get Galloway on board. And that's another premium position in the sport right now.
Yeah, and I think you look at last year, like they kind of loaded up on safety with, Cam Dooley, Quashie Scott's probably, I would say, a nickel safety. So I think there's a need to have, a lot of true cornerbacks in this class. I think Purcell and Gardner are both that. And then I think Dwayne Galloway is that. So they're loading up on corner a little bit. I think that was a need for them. And I think you look at the two guys they got, right? With Gardner, like, I think this is a true scheme fit. Like, he has, I think, the size, the play traits, and the potential that they want, like the big physical corner. And I think Purcell is a little bit different, but he has kind of more, he brings some playmaking to the table, and he brings some fluidity as a cover man to make me think like there's going to be a spot for him here. And specifically, like if I had to make a pick, I would say he probably ends up playing nickel for Kentucky because I think he can play sticky man coverage in there. He can flip his hips. He shows aggressiveness as a tackler. So addressing those positions, I think, was important in this class. I mean, depth at cornerback was an issue this past season. They've had to load up on transfers, so they need to backload that position with some younger, homegrown, high school talent. And I think you're seeing them do that right now.
I want to move on to the wide receiver position, but I also need to bring up something I saw on xgonegiveit2you.com because the photo we had from CJ Works' official visit that we used for the graphic is him throwing the L's down. And somebody quote tweeted, "Huge addition for Rick Pitino and the UK football team." Oh, man, Louisville fans, they're big mad right now. They're big mad. And, oh, man, did they just lose another commitment? I don't know. Probably. They've lost so many. It's hard to keep up.
LeBron Hill just flipped to Purdue, a receiver, 6'5" receiver. They had Jake Cook flip to Ohio State.
It's tough.
The recruiting is just not going great. I think they got a sub 50 class right now.
Tough. Real tough.
They're not getting anyone in Kentucky. I think, Quisenberry, Montavian Quisenberry, who committed while I was gone to West Virginia. I think it came down to him in Louisville. So, yeah, the high school recruiting is not going great, and who saw that coming?
Oh, I couldn't see that coming. But it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart. If you're heartbroken in your day-to-day work and you want to change things up, Andy Ludicky at myperfectfranchise.net, he's got you covered. He's a big recruiting fan, loves it, also loves helping others. And over at My Perfect Franchise, he's got some expertise in this field of work. So if you're looking to maybe branch out, start your own business, his expertise helps others find the American dream through a variety of consultation and evaluation processes. Make sure you're ready to rock and roll when setting up your new franchise. Just reach out to Andy. He's got a ton of knowledge in this world, and best of all, his services are 100% free to you always. So go check him out. You can send him an email at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. Visit him at myperfectfranchise.net or give him a call, 404-973-9901. Andy Ludicky, My Perfect Franchise. Look, we knew that they were going to have to get a lot of receivers in this class because you're probably losing your top 3 pass catchers. And the guy you mentioned, Quisenberry, I just kind of always assumed that he would be in the fold. That's just kind of how things have operated here. He comes from a program that sends a lot of guys to UK. He's a little undersized, but they've been in touch with him for a long time. They need a lot of bodies. They're going to take him. I thought not taking Quisenberry was an indictment on how good they feel about where they stand with other receivers in this class, and it's recruiting places they don't typically recruit. Houston, East St. Louis. Who's the kid that that was West Palm Beach, Florida. And then you do have an Ohio guy though from Pick North in Columbus. So I've been kind of fascinated because I wasn't sure how much we could believe in Daikiel Shorts as a recruiter recruiting the Mid-Atlantic and Texas. But the early returns are good.
Yeah, I think there was some worry when they lost Cameron Miller to Wisconsin. Like that was a guy I thought Kentucky left for and was going to get. So miss on him. That's concerning. But the 2 other ones, Nick, were kind of Jacaden Ferguson and Andrew Marsh. You got them both on campus, I believe, for unofficials in the winter. And then you get the OVs. But it kind of got quiet there for a little bit on both those guys. So you weren't really sure. But they get Ferguson on campus, and he commits really right away. Now, the thing with Ferguson was I believe LSU was recruiting him to be a defensive back.
Yeah, they want to play corner.
And so I think Kentucky is kind of giving him the old Justin Rogers recruitment. Yeah, you come here and you can play this side of the ball. And when I went and watched him, Nick, he's a 6'2" outside receiver, had 48 receptions for 558 yards and 5 touchdowns. As a junior, he's a 10.8 guy in the 100 meters. But on tape, he wins with the releases, both inside and out, very smooth. Got a big catch radius.
Yeah.
And you can see the route running potential with him. Gets in and out of breaks, can go left, can go right. Some polish is needed, but you can see him developing into kind of a legitimate route runner. And I think he projects as kind of your ex-boundary receiver who's got the size and physicality to beat press coverage. And he's got the route running chops where he's going to be able to get open against some tighter coverage, and he's got a big strike zone as a receiver because that catch radius is very big, and you see him make some one-handed grabs.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I think there's a lot to like about him.
It seems very superficial of me to say this, but how many times do we turn on the tape of a receiver that UK's recruiting and you're just watching them run by guys?
I think it's important to note, though, because we don't deal with this area very much. Texas is a lot more advanced.
That was my point. He's making competitive catches in. I did the math. I believe he's the 9th out of 12 classes, 8th or 9th. So they have 6 classes, 2 divisions in each class, and they are the lower division of Class 5A. So the 8th out of 12. Nevertheless, he's playing big-time football against big-time players. So it's not like Denke running by Class 4A in Kentucky and just, making easy touchdown grabs. This dude's in the middle of, pretty good coverage.
Right. In the Houston metro area. Yeah.
Yeah. So to me, that's the part where I'm just like, okay, the OT7 catch was cool. And we've got Adam Brenneman making highlights talking about that guy. But no, give me the tape of him going in between zones and then getting his tiptoes down and making a tough two-hand grab near the sideline. But that's some next level stuff.
Yeah, the ball skills are intriguing. The big catch radius seems like he has good hands. I think the potential as a route runner is intriguing. And like I mentioned, Texas, the players are more advanced there. So you're gonna get evaluating them as high school prospects. They're gonna be they're more of a finished product because a lot of these players have been in this system since they were 11, 12 years old, right?
Yeah, right.
And they play a college schedule there. If you go to the state championship in Texas, you're playing 15, 16 games. You're playing a big boy schedule. So I think there's a lot to like with him. It's Preston Bowman, I believe, or no, that's DeMarcus Gardner right there.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to like about him as a big X receiver. I think they still have a need at slot, but you get Ferguson. I think he's a good complement to Quentin Simmons. Like when I watch Quentin Simmons, he's I would say more of a Z receiver, like your vertical field stretcher guy, can get downfield and get open vertically. Where Ferguson is more can operate short, intermediate, underneath. He's going to be the guy in the boundary you line up and going to be the first read for the quarterback. A lot of times he can make tough physical catches. He can win off the line. That's something that's very, very important at the college level. So I like what I've seen from him, and I think it's a good first recruiting win for Dick Hill Shorts. There's expectations were high for him as a recruiter coming over, but it's a good, solid first win in an area where Kentucky just simply, Nick, they just do not recruit. Like Texas, they just really don't get any players from there.
So you mentioned the need at slot, and in my mind, just when you see the build, the size, you think, okay, Preston Bowman, he's probably the guy, right? Well, what say you? Because from a physicality standpoint, 6 foot and he's cut up pretty good, right? He's a physical player, but I can he be a slot guy, or does he have enough juice to be able to do that?
Yeah, that's I think that's a big question. Like Preston Bowman's the type of player, Nick, where it comes draft time, and you're analyzing NFL receivers, and you're like, oh, this guy's a ball winner. And a lot of times what that means is like this guy isn't creating separation, but anything thrown in the vicinity, he catches. So like to me, there's top end speed, I think, concerns with Bowman, even though I think he ran a good 40 time when he was at Kentucky's camp. But like it's the old, there's not 50-50 balls, there's like 80-20 balls with him. He catches everything, and he's got some impressive yak runs on tape, yards after catch. Again, I don't know about the speed. I don't know about the route running per se.
Right.
But I saw him in camp. I was there the day he camped and earned that offer. That was the last camp of the season. And again, he caught everything that day. Like, I mean, he was catching everything, whether covered deep or whether the corner fell down, and all different types of throws, strong hands. And so I think there's a lot to like from that aspect. But again, I do the speed, little C. Like I think that's a great example on that fade. He just finds a way to catch it. He's got great hand-eye coordination, catches everything. But like, where does he fit? I mean, if you made me pick, I would say, yeah, maybe he would be a slot and would kind of be just, all right, we're gonna get him matched up against a smaller defender, and we're gonna throw it up to him. And so I think there's some stuff to like from that aspect. But he's definitely a different. Feels like maybe a little bit of a tweener, maybe a guy who could play multiple positions. And watch this. He's punting here on this highlight, and he goes up and snags this with one hand.
Yeah.
Like that was one of the more plays on his tape when you dug into his junior film.
Yeah. The ball is going to get snapped over his head. He snatches it with one hand and then gets the punt off. Not as cool as Lynn Bowden's punting highlight, but nevertheless.
not per se.
And that's another thing too. So he went to the same school as the Ohio State running back that they were recruiting. What was that guy's name? Who's the running back we thought Kentucky was getting last year?
Are you talking about Cornist, or are you talking about Sam Williams-Dixon?
Sam Williams-Dixon, yeah. So they went to the same school, and he got that early offer, but not the one that actually matters. And I remember being there for that day, and I was like, that guy is going to end up being – because he was he's grown up some. I bet he's grown up a couple of inches and really filled in nicely. And then he came back to camp table to get the committable, the real offer. Which was significant. And we spent a lot of this show talking about the guys who look like they have it right now, play right now. They aren't always. Oh, hold up. Sorry. I forgot to mention the fact that Bowman did the thing where he committed and then Ohio State offered the next morning.
Yeah. There's a lot going on with that right now.
Yeah. Brody Lennon, since we've been on air, he did end up go ahead and committing to Ohio State, which that kind of felt like the writing was on the wall there whenever he got that offer. Stinks because he had some real juice. He just showed too much of that juice to Ohio State. So that was a real bummer. But you're getting
Yeah,
some.
we got word that if he camped at Ohio State, that the offer would probably come. Now he did. There was the first week he thought we were gonna camp, and he didn't, and that's when I put the RPM pick in for him land at Kentucky. But then he snuck back there like the day before his OV with Kentucky started to camp at Ohio State. And so once that happened, it wasn't a good sign for Kentucky's pursuit there.
No, it's
so that's 2 years. That's 2 years in a row, Nick, a tight end from Ohio, from Cleveland. Can't get OV'd at Kentucky. It was looking really good. We thought they're going to get Damarian Witten last year, and then he does that late minute camp, gets an offer and visits, and then they wrap it up right then. That's 2 years in a row that's happened for a Cleveland tight end.
And I don't know if they'll get a tight end now this year. They might just wait till next year.
It's not a huge position in need. He was the only tight end that OV'd over the summer. Never say never. We'll see what other targets emerge. Like Kamari Anderson wasn't on the radar at this time 2 years ago, and then he came on the radar in December. So never say never. I mean, I think they're always in the tight end market because they value that position. Whether fans think they value it, think they value it or not because of the target share. But
hey, when you're $1 million recruiters, the tight ends coach, you're valuing tight ends. Damn it.
So never say never. But as of now, I don't think they're going to be chasing tight end prospects.
I wanted to mention though, because when you're at Kentucky, not every guy is a 4-star that is going to play right away. You're going to take some quote-unquote projects. You're going to take some guys who aren't being recruited very highly, who have the traits that you like and you think you can develop into starters or the very least rotational players. And I think that's exactly what they got with Nicholas Smith, who is an enormous kid. I think we got him listed at 6'7", 240, 250. Really, really big kid. Didn't have a lot of offers, but Brad White likes the length. And Luckett, you think he's got the frame that he can add 40 pounds and maybe even be a 3 technique?
Yeah, I would assume so. We have him listed 6'7", 255. I think he continues to grow as we get the beat dropped here. To me, like, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, this is a true developmental prospect. He has a unique bundle of physical traits that include size, length, and a frame that I believe can hold more weight. I believe he's got some positional versatility along Kentucky's defensive front, but he needs some technique work and some sweat equity built in a strength and conditioning program. I thought, Nick, for a guy 6'7", he plays with good bend and pad level at his size. I think he moves well for a guy with his type of, kind of basketball frame, for lack of a better phrase.
Pretty sure he plays tight end for him too. You got to be able to move pretty well to do that.
One thing Kentucky has shown us, specifically with Anwar Stewart, is they have a good track record of developing these tall defensive linemen that with all these lengths. Like Deion Walker obviously stands out, but then there's Calvin Taylor that they turned into something. I think Khalil Saunders is a big old dude, 6'5", 6'6", that they developed into a player. And even I think Keyshawn Silver is a bigger guy like this, really, really tall, that they developed, that they couldn't see the field at North Carolina, and they've turned into a quality SEC defensive lineman. So I think Smith has some physical traits that you could mold, but he's gonna need time. So he might be a year away from being a year away, right? Like you're gonna need to let him kind of cook and develop behind the scenes here for a couple of years. So he's probably going to be a player we stop talking about or forget. It's kind of on the roster. And then another tall guy I think I would throw in there is kind of Jamari Stinkins, right? They developed him into a good player, and he's going to play a big role at Purdue this year on a Power 5 defense in the Big Ten. And so I think you see the traits, you see what they're betting on. Now they have to develop it, but their track record of developing players like him, they have a good track record. And in his interviews with Jacob, man,
dude,
like he talks the talk. Like he does. Like he comes off as a kid that has a lot of confidence. And that is, to me, that's a very important trait to have. Like if I'm recruiting a player, Nick, that, all right, we're going to really need this guy. Like it's going to take him a while to get there. I want a guy who believes in himself because then you don't have to coach his, his attitude or buy-in either. You have that's already there.
And also just the love for the school. He set his commitment date before even getting to the OV. He wants to be a Kentucky Wildcat, and that matters. That matters. Did I miss any of the commitments? There's been so many. Was there one player we didn't get to?
We knocked them all out here, and then of course we started with Cedric Works.
Love it. Well, so who's next? The Dice, they're hot. It is the dead period, so no more official visits. Recruits can't be on campus at all until the football season because the new recruiting calendar is in effect. That's one of the many changes to college football they made. Just like weed being legalized, that got a lot of play on Facebook. But it's always been on a school by school basis, but they're not going to test it for postseason play anymore. But transfer portal windows are shorter from 45 to 30 days, and they got rid of the stupid last weekend of July, which I hated. And there would be people on KS board who were just like, why doesn't Kentucky do anything? Why doesn't Kentucky do anything? It's like, man, it's the last weekend in July, and they're just shoehorning this stupid Tiger Bait, the 502 barbecue, pool party. Like, it was just some stupid recruiting weekend. But it's like, you're starting camp next week. Just do that. You don't need this one final weekend. So I'm glad they got rid of that. And I'm glad they shrunk the portal windows down because who needs 45 days to decide they're going into the portal? 30's more than enough.
Yeah. They originally had it 60.
Yeah.
45 last year. And I even said on this podcast, I was like, it's too long. Why are we doing 45? Like, that's not when they have to decide. It's just when you have to have your name in there. 30 days is plenty to me. You've got from December to early January. That's plenty of time.
And the only reason why I think it should probably stop at 30 days is
you have to be careful with the coaching carousel because that's has a lot to do with it.
And I know they get an extra time. I would just be wary of disingenuous actors. So for like, let's say I'm second tight end on the depth chart. I know I'm second tight end on the depth chart. Coach tells me I'm second tight end on the depth chart. And then 2 weeks into the portal, they go and get another tight end that moves me to third on the depth chart. And I'm like, wait, you told me I was cool with being second, but now you're going to lie to me? Well, now I want to go hop in the portal. So I think it does protect players a little bit from stuff like that, where once new guys come in, if they feel like they're getting pushed out, then they can hop in, 4 weeks in. But I was very happy they got rid of that last official visit weekend of July. So we'll wait till the season starts to make that happen. So Luckett, let's make a prediction now. There's a couple guys who official visited, a couple guys who didn't, who might be the next to pop. Who do you think is the next commitment in the 2025 recruiting class?
While we were on here, Nick, Steve Wilfong put in a crystal ball for Kentucky to land Brian August, offensive tackle from South Florida.
Oh,
that always felt like one. If Kentucky pushed their chips in, they could get him. Mm-hmm. I would watch him, and I know everyone's focused on Javion Campbell, rightfully so. But there was another defensive lineman that visited over the weekend out of Tennessee who's a true nose tackle, Kalen Edwards. Mm-hmm. Former Auburn decommit, OV. Now, he committed to Auburn, and then their defensive line coach left for the Jaguars. And so he decommitted back in January or whenever that happened. But he still took an OV to Auburn, took an OV to Louisville, took an OV to Kentucky. This is an Auburn-Kentucky battle. It seems like I think Kentucky has a really good chance to get him. So I would keep now. He's pretty quiet, so he keeps keeping a little bit of a low profile. So we'll see what happens with him. I will watch him. I think he's one that could potentially pop here soon.
I know there is some concern about Javion Campbell because following his official visits, we had some Bama insiders put in crystal ball picks for the Crimson Tide to land Campbell. I'm not wavering in my RPM prediction from earlier in the month. I feel like Kentucky's in a good spot with Campbell. But one player that is certainly flying under the radar, who I don't believe made it to campus, but could be here in a month is Denice Jackson from Georgia, who spent the last 2 years, I want to say, at a JUCO in California. That could be a situation where one day I'm out by the pool on a Friday afternoon and I look up and I'm like, oh, snap, get committed. So that's another one I'd keep an eye on. Somebody asked earlier about Andrew Marsh. Of all of the kind of post-June visit RPM picks that were coming in, there was one that came in from Michigan from the Texas receiver, and I thought you made a really good point, Luckett. I like Kentucky's chances to flip him a lot better if he's committed to Michigan instead of committed to Texas or Oklahoma. And I would say the same thing too about Campbell. Part of the reason why I'm not changing my pick, even if he commits to Alabama, Kentucky can flip that guy. They can just like, I mean, I'd be a little bit worried about Marsh, but there's some recruitments that are going to be announced in the next couple of weeks that won't be done until December.
Yeah, we've seen Kentucky from the flip thing in December be more kind of involved in that kind of market. And so, yeah, I think Marsh is one to look at, but he's always gotten the feel of a guy who probably won't decide this summer. Probably will go into the season. So that one could still have a long way to go. And then, yeah, I think the junior college nose tackle, that seems like that's probably going to happen. I mean, that's maybe the most important one currently because he's going to have an impact on this year's team.
Another thing, too, Isaac Souls, we didn't mention him. I'm not as worried about NC State as I was, even if he does pick there, too, because that's another one where if they've got to flip, then they can get out that spatula. I'm
trying to get enough to where I can maybe go on record for a pick, but right now my gut says NC State.
Huh. Interesting.
I just get the feel that he's kind of that they've recruited him. I think it's similar to the Jason Patterson recruitment last year, where I think NC State has done a really good job recruiting him. Like Cincinnati, I think, did a really good job recruiting Jason Patterson and made him feel, the love. And I think if you dig into some of the stuff going on there, he seems to really have hit it off with some of the commits in that class, specifically a quarterback that's committed to NC State. So I could see that happening. Now, with that said, I would give Kentucky a good chance to flip him. But my gut my hunch, I should say maybe not my gut, but my hunch is that I think NC State is maybe the leader right now, but we'll see how that plays out. I believe July 18th is his locked-in announcement date, but it definitely feels like NC State versus Kentucky here as we enter decision time.
I believe Jermeel Atkins is July 5th and Dwayne Galloway's July 4th. That may be flip-flopped. So I've got RPM picks.
I think it is. I think Atkins is the 4th, and I think Galloway's the 5th, but I'm not 100% certain on that.
So there's a lot of moving parts. Kentucky's loaded up on commitments. They're up to 10 now, 11, and we're talking about them adding 6 more.
I believe it's 13 now. I believe they had 12, and I believe Cedric Works get them to lucky number 13.
All right. Well, I hope I didn't have that wrong in the post that I wrote earlier. I didn't include it. Okay, good. So there's a lot of news happening today. We went live at the right time and we went a little long, but there's a lot of moving parts. It was a busy NBA draft day yesterday. Now we're getting busy in recruiting, which Luckett. I got to wrap up the show by saying, my God, the NBA draft is such a garbage product compared to the NFL draft. Holy crap! Growing up, man, I loved the NBA draft. That was one of my favorite events, and part of it was just one night. I played a lot more basketball video games, so you could, oh man, he'll be fun to be on that team, and there's Kentucky guys involved. Dude, ESPN sucks so bad at NBA. They're so bad. I was just shocked at how awkward and clunky that broadcast was, and somebody had a really funny tweet. It was like, Mel Kiper on the 7th round, 243rd pick. He's a Division III nose tackle, but he's got put up some great testing numbers. A little undersized, but this is a sneaky one to watch. And then it's 15th overall pick, Stephen A. Smith. I've never watched this man play basketball in my life. And it's like, it just sums it up right there. Like
Yeah, I think the closest thing ESPN has to like a true kind of, well, they have Gavoni, but like a true kind of like both can play both sides of it is like Fran Fraschilla. He's like the Lewis Riddick, I would say, of NBA.
Why don't they have him on anymore? I don't understand it.
And he was really good, I thought.
He was great
in the draft. And not having him on is like, I think that's a big mistake. Now, with that said, it's hard to compare the two because the NFL draft is such a machine and an industry, and it just generates so much more content, eyeballs, interest, all of that. So it's hard to compare the two. We have months after the Super Bowl to get ready for the draft.
right.
You have days after the NBA Finals to get ready for the NBA draft. And then you have players that aren't even in America that you don't know. They're playing in other leagues across the country. You've got college players who are only here for 6 months. And you've got, guys in G League Ignite. So there's just like a lot of like where the common audience knows nothing about these guys, where in the NFL, the common audience doesn't necessarily know these players, but at least kind of has an idea of them if you're really in the weeds. And if you're not, you know who the good schools are, and you've been able to read about the left tackle from Ohio State or the inside pass rusher that had 10 sacks last year at Clemson. Like, you're able to get a little better feel for that. You don't really have that here in the NBA. And then one thing I think really hurts the product, Nick, is the trades. Like, what is going on? What team is going to who? Like, you had how has that not been fixed yet? Like, if you're going to make the draft,
you 7 picks event, later. Just announce it before you make the pick.
The NFL does it in real time before the picks. I don't understand why they can't do that.
Stupid.
Like, I don't understand. How is it that hard? That needs to be fixed. But it's just they're hard to even compare to me because it's way different. It's two different things. And where the NFL, it's like a big tentpole event. Like, I think the draft in the NBA, they want it to be like that, but we just don't. You don't have any time for the audience to get ready for it. Like, it's just like, oh, Boston Celtics won the title. See y'all at the draft in 3 days. Like, it's like, what?
I appreciate you mentioning the trades part though, because that's so frustrating.
I mean, we have Kentucky players who have been drafted put on a hat of a team that they're not even going to play for. When everyone knows it's not the team they're not going to play for. So they go up there for the photo op with the commissioner. It's like this big moment in their life.
And it's the wrong team.
And they're not wearing the right team's hat. It's just like,
so
what are we doing?
The one player that got me last night, it stopped me in my tracks because after a while you kind of fade it out, and I'm writing the morning post. When they announced Bub Carrington from Pitt, it was a Bub. All right, one, of course, Bub Carrington plays for Pitt. 2, Pitt had an NBA draft prospect on their team last year. 3, can Bub find me a car? I'm looking for a car. I think Bub Carrington, he's a guy. He knows a guy with a car. Just so.
Yeah. Another thing that's tough, like Keyshawn George played at Miami last year. Miami was terrible. He averaged like 6 points a game. He's a first-round pick. It's like, what? And then Dalton Connect, who was just kicked ass all year last year, falls in the draft because he's 5 years older than that George guy.
Hey,
it's just hard. It's
just
different. Like, it's totally different how they draft. Yeah. And then you got Edie snuck his way into the top 10.
Well, that's enough basketball talk for us. We've had plenty of football talk too. We appreciate you following along with 11 personnel, where next week we typically record on Thursday. It's going to be July 4th, so we'll probably bump it up a day or two or something like that. But we will be back for more, or hell, who knows? Maybe we wait for the announcements to pour in and we do a little rapid reaction. But as always, just make sure you're subscribed to the KSR YouTube channel to get a notification every time we go live. We appreciate you following along. For Adam Luckett, I'm Nick Roush. Go Cats and go Kroger.